Good morning, critical thinkers. I have changed my chalkboard for you. So now I've got colored chalk. I got my flowers back there. It's still a little bit of a mess here. I mean, I really don't need this chalk sitting here like this. And what is up with this crap? Honestly, what's up with this crap? What's this? What's that? Well, Dr. Feravich, it holds the chalk in place. Really? Because it seems to slide right back down pretty easily. And what's up with these? I don't know. My son did like the Avengers, so I guess at least some of them. Captain America, he did. So I guess, cool. So, through the barking and madness, two separate things, we're going to get through this show. Not like it's a drudgery, like we want to be here. So, Lucy, you see, Chumley can only do this. This is what Chumley does. I have a lot of other looks, don't I? I sure do. Never had an opportunity to show up. Ugh. All your witchery over here, and the best that you can do is get a bunch of fruit flies. What does that say about you, Heidi? What are you hiding? We all know. All of it, right? I'm sorry. It's probably somebody in my family's fault. But I don't know. I've been kept in the dark by the dark triad. That's my philosophical class. Let's get going here. This is so good. This is really good. Would you like to hear the goal? Sometimes I make sure I cover what the slide says because I know that I won't get to it or that it is like interesting and inescapable. And that is, what is the goal? What is the goal? We're going to jump to it right now. The goal is, I'm looking at the fall colors down here. Did she forget what the goal is? Did she just forget what the goal is? No, of course not. I'm going to tell you what the goal is. The goal is, you're like, she did forget. She's just buying time. No, I didn't. Of course I didn't forget the goal. Hello? No, the goal is to separate class by race. Now, if you remember, what we're talking about here is we're talking about race, class, and politics. What are the politics? The politics are to split class up based on race. In case you didn't get that from day 70, whatever I have up there. Because I didn't update that on purpose. Okay? So, what's the goal? The goal is to divide the class. The goal is, the politics are to divide class up based on race. And what does that do? It splits the numbers in half. Can I just say something about this whole thing about what is DNA and what isn't DNA? So, because that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about from the very beginning. Well, I've got the brains, right? So that's DNA. Apparently I don't have the brains to pull off this operation, but I have a lot of brains. I'll just say so myself. If you haven't heard me say it before, how smart I am, then you get to hear me say it now. which is interesting because my dad, who I know as my dad, who clearly isn't my biological dad, is extremely smart as well, like off the charts smart. All of us are. All of us are off the charts smart. So, my mom included, but she was quite timid. But she was, and who would know how smart she was? Because my dad was king of manipulation. Ooh. I started saying in the last class, you could have gone with the other persona. Well, clearly you did half your life, right? Yeah, no, you did not. You stuck with the Tony Garcia persona, even in your other life, and that's too bad. So, let's see what's going on here with this, because it's just a weird fit on top. Like, I think my boob should be here. What did she say? What did she say? Yeah, I think so. I think this was made for a 12-year-old. Still looking good. Oh, I'm not only smart, I'm good looking. That's for all of you assholes out there. We're in a high school class. Can you just put it in high school terms? I sure will. You get me, don't you? Okay. It's like Annette looking in a mirror, looking in a mirror. But it's not the looking in a mirror, looking in a mirror, looking in a mirror, looking in a mirror. Infinity. It's not that. If you were in my last class, you'll understand nodes and branches. That's what we're on right now. We're on a little roller coaster of nodes and branches. Okay? But we have our goal. What was it? Politics plays a part in separating class by race. Got it? We already know our hypothesis. We've been there for a long time, right? I'm going to get my gum out of my mouth. Ugh, it's so stale. Remember back in the old days when you could chew a piece of gum for a day and a half? I did. We was poor. Apparently we weren't. I was poor. Luckily not poor in spirit. Lucky for me, not poor in spirit. Right? And that's what I started saying about the DNA. So, what part of the DNA is not poor in spirit? Oh, all of my family was spirited, weren't they? All of my family is spirited. So, then what? What part of this is not DNA? Well, you can see I am a revolutionary, right? It's clear. I've already got the answer. It's your moral choices. That's it. If you want to know, that's what is not part of my DNA. Because you can see I'm a revolutionary. I have said all along, you could put something in front of me and think I interpreted it this way. I could tell you expected the interpretation to go this way, and the interpretation went that way. And all of that right there, this is a little spiritual classroom, all of that is to my benefit. All of that is to my benefit. That perspective, that light that I'm given and you're given gives us, is it darkness that you've chosen? You have no light then, right? Gives us health, well-being, right? That perspective right there. So I was trying to think of the piece of information I was given the other day, and I was just like, I clearly interpreted it this way, And I was like, there's something else, because that's not really a common interpretation. What would be another interpretation? And then I got it. I was like, oh, that was the interpretation that the mystery, whatever, was expecting. Not the one I took. You cannot, and your interpretations are on the inside. They occur in here, right? No, which means nobody can see them. You have no idea how I interpret the cues that I've been given. And oh my gosh, the other thought that keeps coming into my mind is George Orwell and Animal Farm and in 1984, which I listened to. You know, sometimes it's not a bad place to be, thinking a little crazy, just a little bit off the rails. If you are founded in, because that's what changes these things here. If you are founded in clear thoughts, which is, I'm weighing things the way I'm supposed to, that's where the moral choice is. How am I regulating? How am I regulating? If I have a general trend to regulate for good, then my interpretations, one at a time, one step at a time, is going to take me in the exact opposite direction of somebody whose interpretations are different, are for an immoral purpose. Same piece of information, one step at a time. We both start here. And with every interpretation, are you interpreting it in a way that is beneficial to you, selfishly? Or are you interpreting this in a way that is going to make things better? It maybe makes things better for one person. It may make things better for one flower, for one dog, right? For one child, for one woman. It may make things better for one small element. And it's only one small step in that direction but each time, you will be facing in an entirely different direction than somebody who's made an immoral choice using that, right? So back to the DNA. I'm a revolutionary, absolutely. I always have been. Always in my mind, I've been. Right? You know, I dabble in having a good time, but I don't become an addict. I'm driven by the mind, less by the body. I just don't, I'm not so strong. I'm not driven by the body. And I get control over that. And that's the beginning of what's going on here. Stereotyping that leads to attitudes, that leads to behaviors. That's what we're talking about. Will Ferrell, lots of vocal fry going on right now. I liken it to Kathleen Turner. Sexy voice, Kathleen. Sexy voice. I liken it to Kathleen Turner. How about that? I liken your voice, Will Ferrell, to, well, a Ferrell. See that play on words there? You know what I do like about not getting Botox is that my eyebrows are naturally like up here. The front of my eyebrows are naturally up here, in case you wanted to know. See when I laugh, see how they naturally go like that. the hell's she thinking about now? What the hell's going on now? That's what I can hear my dad's voice. That's what's going on. I can hear your voice. Take your time. Take your time. Get back to the audience when you can. I love it. I just love that part of your show. Smartless. I'm just thinking, why did they pick that name, right? Like, is that the opposite of being a smart ass? I'm not sure. Is that the same as being a smart ass? I'm not sure. Probably so, isn't it? Let's get to finishing up our terms, shall we? And we'll connect those nodes and branches as we go along. So stereotyping is the cognitive component of biases, how you categorize others or things. And right there then is perception. And that is the cognitive component that develops our perceptions, right? But this is strongly an environmental component. What is a DNA component is our ability to categorize and recategorize. That's what we regulate. That's our ability. That's our DNA. That's what we regulate. Our ability to categorize and then recategorize if it's necessary, right? Our brain, left to its own devices, would take the piece of information and at a very basic level would file that information away, right? So it would file it based on shape. It would file it based on color. And it would file it based on other knowledge about it, right? And it would file it. And these are all separate files that are nodes with branches that attach to them, all right? So they're all separate files there that were brought together, that were filed away from one single event, okay? Knowledge, color, knowledge, like, right? And the emotions that go with it too. So all of those things. When I take this and I look at it, I don't put it together in my, well, I can put it together in my mind, but I'd have to do it instantaneously, and that would take a lot of work. I put it together differently than saying cylinder, pink, stainless steel, lid. What is that, about 12 inches, right? No, that's not what my mind does. What my mind does is coffee cup, right? So, but somehow it has every piece of information that I just mentioned. Somehow it has in the name coffee cup, for this specific pink, cylinder, always coffee cup cylinder, right? Most of the time coffee cup shorter, right? That sounds like Dana Carvey. Coffee cup shorter, stainless steel cylinder. I can't do impressions, but I will learn because you are an expert at teaching, and I'm going to learn. I am. I've heard you. He starts up here and he goes down the stairs. How about that, Dana Carvey? How about it? I'm not a fast learner, but I can still learn. I'm not a fast learner, but I can still learn. Can you really? Really? Can you learn? Because that accent says maybe you can't. Just saying. She's kind of on a roll. So, DNA, we all categorize. As I said, you might categorize the great example would be laying on your back looking up at the clouds, and your brain does it automatically. Here's another great example. If I see something in the distance and I can't recognize it, right? So I'm running along the beach or walking along or dragging my ass along the beach, and I see something in the distance, right? but I can't quite make it out. What does your mind do? You go, forget about it. Forget about it. Something else over here. Don't know what I'm coming up on. Wonder what that... Oh, it was a shark. Right? No. Your brain figures it out. Your brain tries to figure it out before you die, right? And that's the truth of it. It's a survival mechanism. How good are you? I was going to say, how well are you? How good, I was not going to say that. I was going to say, how well, something else. How good are you at surviving? Because these are basic skills. They are basic skills. And it's so interesting because there's been experiments done. I sometimes question the validity. How often have they been repeated? It's, oh, what is it called? Well, I know what, no, I don't. I won't be able to get it to me. But demonstrating that infants categorize things at very young ages as living and non-living, as moving in space or attached to something, appropriate physical properties of something, right? How does an infant not know that their hand is going to go right through this? How does an infant not know that they can't walk through a door? How does an infant know to crawl through a doorway instead of a wall? You're like, well, that's dumb. How does an infant know? I mean, you could say that's three-dimensional sight. We're born with a mechanism that tells us this is a doorway, this is solid, and this is not solid. I can go through this area in my vision, you know, and right there, holy smokes, I have to say, again, I'm pointing to the wall and the doorway I have right there because that was what came into mind when I was just using that example. That was an excellent example. It was. That's an excellent example. I'm sorry, I have to bask in that for a moment because I've been teaching this for I can't even tell you how many years, and it's hard for students to understand that this experiment that I'm thinking of in my mind that I don't want to have to take time to explain because my example is better. It's hard to get from the experiment. It's hard to get that this is evidence for infants understand physical properties. But the best example for you would be that an infant knows from the time they're crawling, can move around, even any body part, right? They don't try and go through the cup. How do they know I can't go through the cup? How do they know? How, or at least once or twice. An infant's not like to the wall, right? At least once or twice. Trial and error. That's how some psychologists say we learn. If it's all environment, then it's all trial and error. And if that's the case, then I'm not born with any information, blank slate, tabusa rosa. No, I'm not saying that right, but whatever. I never say it right. Okay. We're born with something. We're born with the ability to not have to trial and error our head through a wall. Or I should say, to trial and error our head not through a wall. We didn't have to do that. We don't see anybody doing that. We don't see anybody doing that. I've never seen an infant trial and error their way through a doorway. We're born with certain information. And some information is the ability to categorize. Now, Then the environment comes in, doesn't it? Then the environment comes in. So, stereotyping is that cognitive component that's in our DNA. You want to eliminate that? Good luck, Chuck, right? And what I mean by that is, hi, Uncle Chuck, you look just like Robert E. Lee. Besides that, I just lost the thought. I know I was saying trial and error and good luck, Chuck. That's what I got. Okay? No, we have to be born, and I know it had something to do with the environment too, right? So, we have to be born with this ability to, sort of almost like basic computer abilities, to register the data, right? But it's the environment that helps with our interpretation of the data, right? If the data early on says smells like mother's milk, and that's comforting because my mom has been comforting. So all I would need at a very early age to develop an attitude about my mom is to smell her milk. That's it. That's it. Oh my gosh, today's a good day. That's it. For an infant to recreate an attitude about their mother, they need only smell their mother's milk. And what comes on board at that moment is the emotion of the attachment I feel to her, right? Is that attachment warm, fuzzy, nurturing? Then the smell of her milk is going to make my body as an infant do what? Stiffen? Ouch, I hit my finger. Stiffen? Is that what it's going to make my body do? No, it's going to make my body as an infant nuzzle and cuddle, right? That's what it's going to make my body do. Simply from what did I say? Simply from what? From the smell of my mother's milk as an infant. So the DNA is that data. But at a very early age, attitude comes on board. Attitude, the attitude part of any object could be said, all objects are called attitude objects. In psychology, we call all objects, when we're talking about attitudes, we call these attitude objects. Why? Because every object elicits an attitude. This makes me feel, it doesn't have to be a big attitude, right? I'm just, oh, coffee, my coffee cup, coffee. No, it doesn't have to be a big attitude, but it's still an attitude object. Why did I pick pink? It's an attitude object. I have an attitude about pink, right? This is an attitude object. I have a better attitude now about this object now that I have colored chalk on it. That's a great way to think about. I have that sign there, just be awesome. That sign there is an attitude object. It gives me a different attitude than this chalkboard does, which gives me a different attitude now that I have colored chalk than it did when I only had white chalk. And there's all kinds of attitudes that come on with that chalkboard. It makes me feel like a teacher and like school, and I love chalk, right? So that there's a comforting feeling to me about a chalkboard in school. I'm a teacher. I hope it's comforting, right? But also, I got this chalkboard for my character building class, and the first person that comes to mind is Jackie Ottinger, and because I remember her the first time I brought the chalkboards out, she started to cheat. and she's a young girl, so I got caught cheating, so and I got caught cheating, and that was so embarrassing. Don't cheat, because if you get caught, it is the worst. And I didn't want to embarrass her because I got caught cheating once, so I tried hard not to embarrass her, but I just looked at her and I said, don't even think about it. And nobody even knew what I was talking about, but some of them could figure it out, right? Attitude, all of that came on board. There's a piece of chalk. All of that came, that's my, no, that's not a piece of chalk. You know what that is? Do you know what that was? Hold on. I wish I didn't have to stand up. Do you remember? So, this is an attitude object. This attitude object brought on a lot of attitudes. Some of it about Jackie. Some of it, that's interesting too. I'm cross-referencing names. When I stop, that's processing going on. Data. Attitude object. My son made this. I love it, right? And he took his time on that. My other son, as I told you, another attitude object right here, right? Attitude object. I heart you, Mom. Attitude object, right? So I have a great attitude about this and a different attitude than this one. Of course I have a different attitude than that one, don't I? All right. So, I have an attitude about this. This stupid little stick. I have an attitude about, don't I? You can see I am in love with this little stick, aren't I? Because it makes me feel like a teacher. It makes me what? Feel. Attitude. It elicits an attitude is what it does. When that attitude is negative, we refer to it as prejudice. Am I going the right way? Let's go the right way here. We refer to it as prejudice. If I go back and forth, I don't know what the right way and the wrong way is. Prejudice. So, it's your attitude or bias. You could call it bias because prejudices are negative. It's not just an attitude, but it is a bias. We've got this flavor, this feeling about the word that says it's not the same thing as an attitude. If you're prejudiced, there's something wrong with that. But it's still an attitude. It's still an attitude. It is a negative attitude, though. It's a negative attitude because it's a bias. You're missing some information. You're getting something wrong. All right? Where are we on time here? I want all my family back. All of them. I've said it before. I want all my family back. I don't want any of them missing. Not one. Not one. Can you not see how determined I am? Can you not see how determined I am? Discrimination is the behavior. Now, we've already said this, but we needed to beef it up a little bit. I gave you definitions, but we didn't give you a little bit of beef with those definitions. This is going to get annoying really fast, I can tell. Not to me, but likely to you. Okay. Discrimination is the behavioral component of biases when we mistreat others because of our prejudices. So you can almost see like a movement here that starts with a stereotype that brings about an attitude, because every object, person, place, or thing, could be a person, brings out an attitude. Every one of them brings out an attitude, right? If that attitude is negative, It leads to negative behaviors, and we refer to those negative behaviors as discrimination. Discrimination. So, here are the questions to ponder then. These are the questions to ponder. Should we stop stereotyping? Should we stop stereotyping? One more time. Yep. Should we stop stereotyping? Should we stop that? What do you think? Now, see, I need a big blasting answer up there. And I'm going to put it up there. You know I am. Just give me a second. I couldn't find the color, and now I've got a cough, and I can't. Why is it not letting me change this color? All right, we're just going to do this. I think I'm going to change it right now. Here we go. Now let's do it. All right, cut. All right, let's take 2 on that. Should we stop stereotyping? What do you think? We'll do this quickly. Should we stop stereotyping? What do you think? Should we stop stereotyping? What do you think? No, we should not stop stereotyping. No, that's good for us. We categorize things, and what that does is it helps us think faster. We think faster when we stereotype. It makes things very easy for us, right? What about prejudice? Should we try and stop prejudicial attitudes? What do you think? I wonder if I've got this here. Let me see here. Let me just do it this way. All right, as you can see, the answer already that I have. Should we stop prejudicial attitudes? And that's a big whopping question mark. And that question mark has a dual meaning. First of all, we need to question whether or not we should stop our prejudices. But deeper than that, what we need to do, and that's what this question mark is really indicating, is we need to do a deeper dive on it. We shouldn't ignore our negative attitudes. We shouldn't ignore them. Sometimes our negative attitudes get us on the path. Remember how we started this, right? We were talking about my choices and put me in a very different place than somebody who makes immoral choices. That's the environmental difference, right? That's the environmental difference. Same stimuli in the environment. The environmental difference comes when you make a moral choice versus an immoral choice. When I feel a negative attitude towards a person in particular, I need to examine that, is what I need to do. I need to question that. If that negative attitude came from group opinions and no direct experience, then it would be a good idea for me to get rid of that negative attitude, wouldn't it? If that negative attitude comes from because that person has continuously hurt me over and over, and it's specific to that person but not stable across groups, then I can hold on to that. It's a negative attitude. Sometimes negative attitudes, I can be prejudicial towards people who smoke or smoking. What if we took it off a person or the thing? So by extension, I don't like people who smoke. I might not like people who smoke, right? By extension. Okay. All right. Well, is that a good prejudicial attitude to have or not? Well, that one is neither good nor bad, right? But it is a negative opinion about somebody or something, smoking, which generalizes to the person, doesn't it? So we can have prejudicial attitudes about people, about things, about events. I don't like, you could say, I don't like Christmas because of. Examine it. When we have negative attitudes about an attitude object, that's what we're examining, aren't we? We're examining, where did that negative attitude come from? Find out the object. Maybe you're a moody person, right? Maybe you're a moody person. So you walk through the day and you're like, so those are negative attitudes. Those are prejudices. They need to be examined because there's an attitude object that is bringing on that negative attitude. Should we get rid of discrimination? So we started with stereotyping. Should we get rid of stereotyping? Should we try and curb our stereotyping? No. Should we try and get rid of our prejudices? We need to examine them is what we need to do. And some of them we may need to get rid of. Should we get rid of, are you ready? Because you can tell that I'm going to have to do something about this because I don't have any of those up there, do I? And I'm keeping my eyeballs open. But you already know the answer, don't you? I should have done that with the no too, right? Okay. So, we're going to play that again. It doesn't have to be so gigundous. And do that again. Should we get rid of our discriminatory behavior? Should we get rid of discrimination? Yes! Discrimination is treating somebody poorly because of our prejudicial, negative attitudes, right? So that's not only saying, I don't like this. That's like, I'm going to destroy it because I don't like it, right? And we all know from our spiritual classroom, it is Satan who kills, steals, and destroys, right? So we cannot like something. And we could have good reason to not like something. Good reason to not like our dad or our mom or our brother or our sister or our boss or our neighbor. We could have good reason for having a negative attitude towards them. But can that negative attitude turn into discrimination, prejudicial behavior, where I am behaving in a way, because I'm not going to, if the attitude elicits a negative attitude, I'm not going to then discriminate by being nice. I'm going to discriminate by being mean. Do we need to get rid of our discriminatory behavior? What if our discrimination is nice? Well, we call that nepotism, right? Something to consider. Something to consider, right? Discrimination, that's inheritance. Inheritance is discrimination. I give this son or daughter more than the other one, and all you people who aren't my children don't get anything. That's discrimination, isn't it? Right? We need to think where the attitudes come. What about good discrimination? What about, do we need to get rid of good discrimination? And that's a question mark, right? That's a question mark. Should things be, God says, the sun rises and sets on the good as well as the bad. Right? So, to discriminate even in a good way probably creates prejudices and negative feelings. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We're not barreling through this, but we are getting it through it. And we did find out our goal. We got through I don't know, did we get through all of our terms? Like, you're the teacher, Annette. How would we know? I told you, it's Dr. Feravich. That's so annoying. Let me show you this. This is a correlation, is what this is. And a correlation shows the relationship between, we're showing relationships here between stereotyping prejudice in order to find out which leads to discrimination more often. This is where we're going to start when we come back tomorrow. Alrighty, this is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thank you so much for joining me here in the critical thinking classroom. I love to have students here when I am acting like the teacher. I know. Somebody give me a cue card. I need a Wally. Maybe not. Maybe not.